So in our last video, I showed you guys how to do the welding quarter panel on the Focus for the wide body fender flare majig, and I wanted to do the other side a little bit different so that I could do it in a way that you guys might be able to do like at home. A lot of people don't have like a MIG welder or know how to MIG weld, and there's a lot of other like potential issues that can happen when you do like a weld-in wide body versus what I'm going to show you. This method is, I'd say, every bit as good now with like the new adhesives and stuff that they have on the market. The bond is pretty much as strong as a weld, and actually a lot of manufacturers nowadays and their repair procedures for like replacing quarter panels on new cars are recommending using adhesives versus welding for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into. But so I want to kind of go through this in a way that you guys should be able to, if you got some fender flares or like some wide body arches that you want to put on your car at home, that you can do that. You will still need to have access to compressed air, and there will be a couple tools that you'll probably have to pick up in order to do this, but it will be significantly cheaper than buying a welder or spending months trying to learn how to MIG weld or any of that. So here are what I believe to be the majority of the tools that you're going to need for this job. Some of these are kind of generic and you might have them laying around, like a cutoff wheel or a little grinder, drill, stuff like that. But a few of them are unique to this job, right? So, like I said, you're going to need a power drill. You're going to need bits that correspond to your Clecos. A lot of people don't just have these laying around, but you can order these on Amazon for like, I think it's like $40 or maybe even less for the kit. And it comes with 2 different sizes of Clecos and the little pliers. Guys, if you do any kind of metalwork, fabrication, or anything, even if it's a one-time thing, these are worth the investment. They just make life so much easier. When you're temporarily mounting things, using these versus like, screws or something that you have to physically unbolt every single piece of hardware, you save hours of time. So you're gonna need the drill bit that corresponds to those. You're gonna need to pick up some screws or bolts that are the same size as this as well, so that you can actually, you'll see later why you need to do that, but you're gonna need a few to kind of mount the arch into the quarter. This is a flanging tool. Again, this is something you might not have laying around, but you can pick these up at Harbor Freight or like a local tool store. This is a pneumatic one. It draws about 4 CFM, so even a small compressor should be able to run that. And this is really important if you're doing a steel piece, like a steel fender flare, steel arch. If you have something that's fiberglass or FRP, you're not going to need that. This right here, a little cutoff wheel. Make sure you get the skinny blades. You don't want to use the fat ones. It can make a mess. A little air blower, some dial calipers, or just a measuring tape or something, just to make sure that you put your piece on in the right spot and it matches the other side. Safety glasses. You're going to want gloves and all the other appropriate safety gear as well, a respirator, things like that. A marker. And last but not least, this guy is a special tool for applying these 2-part adhesives. And this is what we're actually going to be using to bond the 2 pieces of metal together instead of the weld. This is a 3M product. It's an epoxy 2-part panel bonding adhesive. This will bond steel to steel. It will bond steel to aluminum. It will bond fiberglass to steel. You can use this on a number of different composites. I like this one because it's got a really long work time. You can see 90 minutes. And then it cures up in about 24 hours. And we are in no rush with this project, so 24 hours is just fine. These little plunger guys are about $90, and you pick them up at a local paint store. They do also sell tubes of these structural adhesives that have just the little push plungers on the back so that you don't need to pick up this tool. I just obviously have it because we do a lot of stuff with these adhesives. And then you don't need this per se, but it will make the job go a lot faster. And if there's anything that I forgot, I will be sure to fill you guys in along the way. All right, so the first thing I had to do here was I had some light surface rust on the edge of this fender. So I went ahead and just tapped it with 60 grit on the die grinder. And this is good for two reasons. Obviously, one, I was able to get the rust off. And then two, this spot is actually where it's going to be adhered to the backside of the other panel. So I like to put a little bit of a mechanical tooth in there, right? So, you know, ideally at least 80 grit in the metal so that the adhesive has some more surface area to really bind to. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and test fit it, right? So this might look different on your project. Again, this might be fiberglass or FRP or something. But for us on this particular one, this tab actually needs to get cut off so that this panel can lay flat on the quarter. And we're gonna trim a little bit off the back here where they kind of messed up when they were manufacturing it. It's got a little kink. So I'm gonna go ahead and just chop that bit off actually. And then we're gonna overlay this and drill some holes through it into the quarter panel to just temporarily mount it and mark out where we're gonna cut. This one's the same way as the other side. It sticks down a little bit. We got it all measured out and, you know, mocked up exactly where it needs to sit. I just used some tape to kind of hold it in place where it needs to go. So what I'm going to do now is just run this drill bit straight through the edge of the panel into the quarter, and then we're going to use the clecos to hold it on just so that we have a way to take it on and off and put it back in exactly the same spot each time. Now that it's tacked into place and it's not going to, you know, move around on us or anything, we're going to mark along the top of this, which will give us reference for where I need to trim down for it to sit flush with the flange. And then I'm going to cut in or measure in here because that's going to be, all this is going to get cut out obviously. But if you run the straight blade from the Sawzall through there, then it'll leave that inner structure of sheet metal, like the wheel arch in there. It'll leave that sitting pretty much level with this top of the arch, which means then when we go to lay the sheet metal in there, it'll sit nice and flat across there and it's not gonna have like a weird like bend up to it. Because the way that these inner arches are, pretty much exactly where the top of this is where it's flat. So if I trim up any further, then I'm gonna be cutting like too far up into the inner structure essentially. So we're gonna go ahead and just run a line in here as well. I like to put this tape on the cut line just because it's a little bit higher visibility and lets me see what the hell I'm doing when I got the Sawzall just jumping around all over the place. Makes it a little bit easier to focus. Focus. Yeah, I did the measurement level with the bottom of that right here. so that the metal can just go straight across.
It actually doesn't look terrible to have to do.
No, I just bent it up on the other side and got it to make a pretty good shape. Essentially what we got to do now is just finalize all the measurements so we can do the last bit of cutting. So the flange that you'll be putting on the end of this is 10 millimeters tall, right? So if you use your micrometer or, you know, make a little tool that's 10 millimeters tall, all I do is trace along the edge of the line here and measure 10 millimeters down, and then that tells me where I need to cut the quarter panel, because then when I put the flange on this, they're gonna sit at exactly the same height and it'll lock into the edge of that flange really nice. So I'm gonna mark a line there. I've already got a line down here across the bottom where I need to cut, and I need to trim a little piece off the back edge of this. You can see I have it marked right here where I gotta take that off. And then we'll be good to hopefully test fit it and do some prettying up before we glue this thing on. All right, so we got everything all trimmed up. Seems like it's fitting pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put the flange on this all the way around, and then we'll check it again, do the little trimming and stuff that I need to do, and we'll go from there. The back side of this has got to get ground up too, so we got a few steps before we're gluing it, but we're almost there. So we got this thing all clecoed up, sitting in there pretty good right now. I gotta grind the edge of this paint lip because it's a little bit raised up because it got hot when I was cutting it with the grinder. And I gotta take the paint off anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and grind down this paint lip. I got a few spots like through here where there's some adhesive, like some of the sound deadening stuff that's stuck on the backside still. I gotta get that stuff scraped off, and then I gotta sand all back behind here. This spot here with the body line, I've got to actually bend the metal back a little bit so that it doesn't press up against it like that. It's just doing that because I couldn't use the flange right there because it's got that little crease, so it actually like smash all this down. So I'm gonna get creative on that. I might have to hammer dolly and just use that to knock that down. Aside from that, this is all sitting pretty good. I just gotta pretty up all the edges before, well, just to get it all ready for the glue. And then also look for spots like this, right, where you can see that the metal is overlapping the edge of the flange. So I actually have to take a little bit more material off the quarter panel with the die grinder so that it sits nice and flat, kind of like how this is, how it sits up against the edge of the flange. So just probably another hour worth of work, and this thing should be ready to glue in. You can also use a little mirror to do this, but I don't have a little mirror. See how far off it is now. Nice. I got everything all ground up on both sides, so this is all just in 60 grit. with a little wheel. And now, oh yeah, coated the backside with some zinc-rich primer just to make sure that the back didn't corrode. And then on the front here, I'm gonna go ahead and just wipe it down with some wax and grease remover. I already wiped the inside lip back here. Essentially, you just gotta make sure that the mating surface on both sides is super clean so that the adhesive can stick. Picked up some hardware for this as well. Just ran down the street and got some screws that fit real nice and snug into the holes that I drilled. These are stainless, so we're gonna go ahead and just use those to hold the panel together while it's curing. And then after it's done curing, we'll just grind the heads on those flat, and we'll put a little bit of we'll grind a little bit of a taper down into it so it sits below the surface. And then we'll just do a swipe of the panel bonding adhesive over the top side as well, and that'll help cover over the little circles from the holes and stuff like that, and also this seam, so we don't get any kind of nasty line or anything in the bodywork later on kind of showing through. So a lot of these come with these mixing nozzles, and as you dispense it out, it'll actually just pre-mix it for you. So that way you don't have to, you know, dispense it onto like a mixing board and sit there and stir it all up and stuff like that. So I normally just do the first little bit of it. I'll just kind of, you know, squirt it off into the trash, just in case it didn't mix all the way. I'm gonna make sure that I get a little bit on both sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go along this seam, and I got my glove on so that I can just smear a nice thick bead on the back side of this. And we got plenty of time to work with this stuff. There's no need to rush. You know, hour and a half worth of work time. Just gonna go ahead and make sure we got the whole thing coated real nice. We got this thing all glued on. It's looking good. I'm just going over it right now and just taking off some of the excess panel bonding adhesive that's sitting up above the surface. This stuff needs to cure for 24 hours. So all that we're gonna do is let this cure up overnight. Tomorrow I'll come back and just use the little grinder, and I'll just tap the heads of those screws off. I'll get them level with the surface, and then we'll go a little bit further than flat to just put a little taper in it. And then once the screw heads are gone, I'll mix up a little bit more epoxy, and I'll get this all ground up. All this stuff that, you know, is smeared all over here, I'll get this all ground up, and then I'll mix up a bead of epoxy to run along the seam and use the spreader to just evenly, you know, put it across the surface and everything. And after that, it'll be ready to just sand that down, and I can start doing my body work over top. So that pretty much wraps up what we got going on this side. I've got a few little detail pieces like this that are gonna require me to, you know, MIG weld and stuff like that. A few little details, but hopefully this helps you guys with, you know, your project at home. Might have a little bit better idea of what all it entails. It's something that you want to actually tackle. And make sure you guys are on the lookout for the next videos that are coming for this guy. We've got a lot more stuff to do, a lot of body work, a couple more like modifications and stuff to do.